Runaround Rosie. Rosie is one of the Fat Controller's little engines. She is a hard-working engine and can be very quick at her jobs. She also likes to be very helpful as well. Rosie may be a little engine, but she has a big heart. One day, Rosie puffed happily into Knapford Station. The Fat Controller was waiting. So were Thomas, Percy, Emily, Billy and Molly. The Fat Controller had some news for them. "I am going to be holding a competition," he said.
"What sort of competition?"
asked Molly excitedly. "I have here a plaque saying, 'Really useful engine of the day,'" explained the Fat Controller. He showed the engines a plaque saying exactly what it said. "I have decided to award this plaque to the engine that has been the most useful," finished the Fat Controller. "Remember, no silly behaviour and no avoiding your jobs. Good luck, all of you." As the Fat Controller left, the engines felt very excited.
"I want to win that plaque," smiled Percy. "Pulling the post train will help me win." "Rubbish," said Billy. "I'm a fast little engine. Just watch me go."
And Billy raced away. Emily and Molly snorted.
"What a show-off,"
said Emily.
"That behaviour won't help him win." "I'm sure my politeness to the passengers will help me win,"
smiled Molly.
"Happy engines will surely win something."
And Molly set off to collect her coaches. "Must go," said Thomas. "I must be on time." And he puffed away to fetch his train. Rosie thought about the plaque for a long while. She wanted to win the most.
"I hope I can win that plaque,"
she said to her driver. "We'll see what happens," said her driver. "Really useful is very important to the Fat Controller. Remember that."
I will,
smiled Rosie, and she set off out of the station. Rosie's first job was to collect coal trucks from the coaling plant and take them to the docks. She knew this job was important.
Must be on time,
she puffed to herself. Then Rosie saw Toby up ahead. He was standing all alone. Rosie puffed up alongside him. She could see Toby was unhappy.
"What's wrong, Toby?"
asked Rosie.
"About the water," sighed Toby. "I'm going to be late collecting Henrietta from the fitters' yard."
Rosie felt sorry for him. She wasn't sure what to do. She couldn't leave Toby on his own, and she couldn't collect Henrietta for him. Then at last she had an idea.
"Don't worry," she smiled. "I'll push you to the water tower, then you can be on your way again."
Toby liked this idea, and so did the drivers and firemen. So Rosie changed tracks and buffered up behind Toby. Then her driver coupled her up and Rosie gave one big push. Soon she was pushing Toby down the line to the water tower. Toby was pleased to be being helped out. It was a long way to the water tower, but Rosie wouldn't give up. Her face went red and she was puffing as hard as she could. At last, Toby could see the water tower. He dinged his bell.
"There it is, Rosie,"
he called. Rosie gently stopped Toby beside the water tower and was uncoupled from him. The driver put the hose into Toby's water tank and turned the tap.
"Thank you, Rosie,"
smiled Toby.
"You're a very good friend."
"Happy to help,"
grinned Rosie.
"Now you can be really useful again."
Then Rosie set off happily away. Rosie knew she was late, but was determined to make up for lost time.
"Mustn't let the Fat Controller down,"
she said to herself.
"The coal trucks are waiting."
Then Rosie approached the junction. Her signal was red. She stopped beside the signal box.
"Now we can go straight to the coaling plant,"
she smiled. Then she heard a strange whistle and then a clatter of wheels. It was Neville. He was pulling his passenger train, but he was having problems of his own. His whistle wasn't working properly, and he came to a stop. The driver climbed out to look at his whistle. "Your whistle is nearly jammed," he said. "You can't go on without a whistle."
"But what about the passengers?"
asked Neville.
"We can't let them down."
Rosie was worried for him. so she spoke to her driver.
Can we help, please?
She asked. The driver wasn't so sure. What about our coal deliveries? He thought. We can't keep that waiting any longer. But passengers are very important, said the fireman. It's important that we get them to the station. So the driver agreed, and they spoke to Neville's crew. Rosie changed tracks and she buffered up in front of Neville. His driver coupled him up to Rosie. Then, as the signal changed to green, Rosie heaved and huffed as hard as she could. Soon they were on their way to the station.
We'll get there, we'll get there,
She puffed. It wasn't long until they arrived at the station. Rosie stopped the train and her driver explained to the station master about Neville's broken whistle. I'll telephone for another engine, he said. Meanwhile, put Neville into the siding. So Neville was uncoupled from the train and Rosie moved him from the station into the sidings. Neville was very pleased with Rosie.
Thank you, Rosie,
He said.
you shouldn't have gone to all that trouble.
I wanted to,
Said Rosie.
Helping an engine is always important.
Come on, Rosie, called the fireman. We're late.
Goodbye, Neville.
Whistled Rosie, and she puffed out of the station. Rosie raced towards the coaling plant.
I hope I can make it.
She groaned. Suddenly her driver applied the brakes. Rosie screeched to a stop. There, standing in front of her, was Duck.
What's happened?
Asked Rosie. I'm out of coal, sighed Duck. I can't get to the coaling plant. Rosie was surprised, but then she smiled.
I'm going there,
She said.
I can push you there, and then you can fill up on coal.
Duck was pleased to hear this. So Rosie buffered up behind Duck and she pushed him all the way to the coaling plant. Thank you, Rosie, smiled Duck. Rosie huffed and puffed into the yards as she pushed Duck under the hopper.
There you go, Duck.
She whistled.
Now you can be on your way again.
Then she went to collect her train. She buffered up to the train and was coupled up.
I'm sorry I'm late.
Rosie said to the yard manager.
I had to help 3 engines in trouble.
It's all right, Rosie, said the yard manager, but I'm worried about the coal delivery. We'll do our best, said the driver. Rosie's a quick engine, so we should just make it. Right then, said the yard manager. On your way, please. So Rosie set off out of the yards. Rosie was puffing as fast as she could. The train was heavy, but Rosie was determined to get the delivery to the docks.
I know I'm late,
She said.
but I know I can make it.
Suddenly, there was a loud crack and a hiss of steam burst inside Rosie's cab. Stop! Shouted the fireman. Stop! So the driver applied the brakes. Rosie came to a stop just by an empty siding.
What's happened?
She cried. Your safety valve has burst, explained the driver. You'll have to go to the works to be mended. Rosie was upset. Now her coal trucks wouldn't make it to the docks.
What are we going to do?
She moaned. Then she saw Stepney puffing down the line towards her. Stepney was on his way back to Knapford Station. Rosie whistled as loud as she could. Stepney heard the whistle and came to a stop. What's wrong? He asked. Rosie explained what had happened.
Now I can't get my coal trucks delivered on time.
She sighed sadly. Then Murdoch puffed up towards Stepney. He had just delivered supplies to the wharf. Stepney told Murdoch about Rosie's burst safety valve and her coal trucks. I'll help you, Rosie, he smiled. I'll get your coal trucks to the docks. And I'll take you to the works to be mended, said Stepney. Rosie didn't know what to say. She smiled and looked at her friends.
Thank you, Stepney. Thank you, Murdoch.
She smiled. Stepney was coupled up to Rosie and he pulled her all the way to the workstation. Murdoch raced past with Rosie's train. "I'll get to the docks as fast as I can," he whistled. Rosie and Stepney whistled to him and watched as Murdoch disappeared into the distance. At the workstation, the men went to work on Rosie. So while Rosie was being repaired, Stepney did her work. There were lots to do, but he didn't mind. "This will keep me busy," he said to himself, "and I'm helping out a friend in need." That evening, Rosie puffed a nap at the station. Her safety valve was fixed, and she was feeling better. But she was very worried. She was sure the Fat Controller was going to be cross with her. As she puffed into the station, she saw all of the engines waiting for her. The Fat Controller was pleased to see Rosie. Then he cleared his throat. "I have been watching all of you today, and I have been hearing about your work," he said. "But I have made my decision on who should get this plaque." The engines waited and listened. The Fat Controller turned to Rosie. "Rosie, congratulations," he said. "You are the most useful engine of the day." Rosie could not believe what she was hearing. All the engines cheered and whistled for Rosie. But Rosie was puzzled.
But I didn't do any work, sir,
She explained.
I helped Toby to the water tower, Neville to the station, and Doc to the coal plant. I didn't complete any of my jobs. I'm very sorry.
"I know, Rosie," said the Fat Controller, "but you put your work aside and helped an engine who was in trouble. That is what I like to see. Really useful engines helping each other out. So I think you earn this plaque fair and square." The porter put the plaque on Rosie's funnel. Her driver was very pleased with Rosie. "Your helpfulness was very useful indeed today," he said. "We are all proud of you." "Well done, Rosie," whistled Thomas.
You deserve it,
Smiled Emily. "3 cheers for Rosie," cheered Duck. All of the engines cheered and whistled in delight, and Rosie beamed from buffer to buffer.
There's nothing I like better than working with my friends.
She smiled happily.
Being helpful is a really useful thing to be.
And all of the engines agreed.